Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So there was a release of, I guess, pre or post-launch, patch notes that are coming out based on some of the community feedback. I obviously have comments about the game. I think the scaling in the campaign is not ideal. I know people like the challenge, but it's a bit excessive at this stage. But hopefully some of these sort of address some of these issues. So the first one is dodge roll changes, and for anyone who's been playing like me, I think I've sunk like 50 hours in now. A lot of players are getting trapped by monsters, and so they do intend this, which is crazy. But anyway, it's happening too often. So they've changed the player size limit to 0 instead of 1, which means that we sort of can now push enemies away when we're dodge rolling as well, which sort of works exactly the same in Dark Souls, funnily enough. But that's a good change, I guess. That'll stop people from dying so much, but I think it's probably not extreme enough. They may need to add phasing back into dodge roll or something of that nature. But we'll see how this plays out. Checkpoint changes. Yeah, a lot of the issues that I had, I've got a bit of a grievance with this as well. So a lot of players are reporting that it can be tedious to have to retread areas of maps in order to get back to objectives that they already found. 100% agree. Like Dreadnought was the worst of it. And then basically, we will be, or they will be deploying the following change in the patch later this week. So clicking on a checkpoint will allow you to teleport to other checkpoints in the area that are explored on your minimap. Checkpoints have been added to all entrances and exits of zones to allow for teleportation. A checkpoint has been added to the mid of the first Dreadnought area. Yeah, that area is so long, and I died so many times playing melee on that. We'll be making further adjustments to checkpoint positions as we continue to gather feedback. I don't know, man. Sort of seems like just recalibrating some of the mob packs and stuff like that would sort of stop that from happening so much. But this is a good change nonetheless. Item changes. This is a big one. One of the primary problems, or one of the major problems that players have been experiencing is the feeling the game is not rewarding. 100% agree. This is an area that we have to be very careful when adjusting because it's very hard to reduce drops if we increase them by too much. So on this basis, they've decided they've identified a few key areas where they believe they will significantly improve the experience that players are having. Yeah, like as an overall, like just drops in general would be good. Because yeah, what I found as I was playing through, and I tested this in Act 4 with the final act boss, was the difference between 30 or 40% cold resistance was the total difference of completing that boss or not completing it at the end of the acts. And in Act 1, that is grueling. If you have resistances, you can do it to a reasonable degree. But if you don't have any resistances and you're slogged at 0, then you've got no chance of getting through that without an absolutely tumultuous boss fight. Rare monster changes. We felt the rare monsters were not rewarding enough. This didn't affect the campaign as much because there are more unique bosses, increasing the overall amount of drops, but especially noticeable when playing in the endgame where unique monsters. So, like, I understand they have to focus on everything, but a lot of players aren't getting through the campaign right now, and so like this is still a good change. In particular, the rewards that you'd be getting for the increased difficulty of rares wasn't lining up. Yeah, so like they're basically buffing rewards on maps, right? But here's the problem with this, right? This sort of needs to happen in the campaign irrespectively, so you can get through the campaign. But I guess this falls underneath this item here. Currency changes. So basically, yeah, we weren't getting any currency. It was ruthless currency. So basically, Regal Orbs have an increased drop rate of 40%. Disenchanting of 6 mod rares to give 2 Regal Shards instead of 1. Moving forwards, lesser jeweler orbs have a 33% increased drop rate. Reduce the drop rate of Chaos Orbs slightly as they are less valued, and so it doesn't consume so much of the rare currency drop pool. This causes currency such as Exalted Orbs to increase somewhat, which is good because we need Exalted Orbs to get mods on our gear right. Exalted Orbs are basically like, we need a lot of Exalted Orbs to be able to get through the campaign. Gemcutter Prisms have a 500% increased drop rate. This sort of indicates that exactly what we thought, like skills were undertuned And so this is like trying to retune that up so that there's a bit of power going back to players. The way that Path of Exile 2 works, I realized, is gear is for resistances, skills and skill tree is for damage. That's it. Don't even waste your time putting defense on your tree. Don't build any armor. It's a waste of time. Just get flat damage. So Gemcutter Prisms now have increased quality on gems by 5% instead of 1%. So it's going to take a lot less. They could have like made that scale and it could have been 1% at the very end game, but I'll take it either way. Map mod changes. This doesn't apply to like the largest amount of players right now, which is just a crazy thing to be focused on. Unlucky drop protection. So one of the major issues we've identified are outlier unlucky drops. A single unique monster dropping badly, especially early on, can significantly affect your character. Yeah, no drops means you can't gear up. So we have deployed the following changes. No more than 50% of a unique monster drops can be gold. Act bosses and map bosses will always drop at least one rare. That sort of concerns me to an element of it. Doesn't address the power problem, right? But what it does mean is that there's a ton of unique items in this game that are vendor trash, potentially. So I don't know how I feel about that, but it's better, you know, it's a buff, so I'll take it. The first of these changes is more significant than it first appears because players can't see the difference between normal and rare gold piles. You will get more equipment and currency items, which you can take more advantage of the rarity increases that unique monsters provide. Like, that's good. Like, and that's the problem. Like, basically in Act 1, you are totally starved for gear, like the whole way through. And it's a grueling grind. The same with Act 2 and the same with Act 3 is just a grind all the way through without that early gear to be able to get that power that you need. Now, the only other solution is drop the difficulty. You either give us gear and drops or drop the difficulty, but it's like smoke and mirrors at this stage. It's like moving one sort of goalpost around or slider. They need to do one or the other to basically allow players to overcome that. Click to move. There was an issue where the move only command was name locking. This would often result in your character confusingly attacking in an unexpected direction while holding down this action. That's true. We have deployed the following change. Move only, no longer name locks. Okay. Endgame maps. A concern for players in endgame maps is accidentally missing rare monsters. In addition, many maps did not have a number of rare monsters that they should have. We'll be making the following changes. Rare monsters now appear on minimap that are when there are 200 monsters remaining instead of 50. Many maps have had additional rare monsters added to them to make sure that there are a minimum number of every map type. Over the coming weeks, they'll be continuing to work on map layouts and monster density. It's really interesting, like, this is part of the issue with the endgame right now, but we need campaign fixes too at the same time. And so they did put a whole list of patch notes up here. Basically, yeah, you can go there. I'll put links to everything in the description below. I don't necessarily think the changes are bad. I think the changes are good. They're buffs. They're not nerfs, which is fantastic. Because in the past, GGG has been really like positioned to anchor, and they just make things harder and harder and harder. So they are making it a little easier. Potentially, I'm going to keep an open mind with this. Potentially, with the increase in gear, what I noticed is gear totally makes a difference in your build, right? But there's a lot of skills that need rebalancing. I've been watching a lot of other creator videos, like these are skills that you stay away from and things like that. So currently where we're at is there's a lot of imbalance across the skills. They're not like, my idea is you should be able to take a skill, any skill, and scale it the same across the board with any other skill, and they should be relatively comparable. But right now there are just skills that outperform other skills like gas, gas grenades, sorry, whatever it's called. Essentially, like, that got nerfed yesterday, but, you know, it's still really strong compared to other skills. Melee needs a fairly consistent buff up. Though there are some really strong melee skills, there are others that are just not so good. But yeah, anyway, yeah, let me know down below what your comments are. Like, my stance on the game right now is neutral. I think it has a fantastic future. There are just the teething things that it needs to go through now. So, you know, I'm not saying to players get good or anything like that. Like, I'm blasting through the campaign now that I've got a build that's working for me. For players that are struggling, my comment would be take a back step, take a day, have a break away from the game. It does get really frustrating, but it is an early access, and I think that's the thing that we need to remember. A lot is going to change in the time between this game hits final release, and then basically every time they release new classes, it's going to have to go through a rebalance again. Basically, we're in like a alpha to beta phase right now, so things will constantly change. For people saying the game is perfect, it is very far from perfect. And I think the feedback, you need to have a look at both sides of the shoe. It's neither perfect nor imperfect. There's fantastic elements of it. And the challenge isn't unwarranted. I don't mind the challenge. The challenge is fine until you get to the end of campaign act bosses in Act 1 to 3. They're a lot easier in the second playthrough when you have gear or when you have the ability to acquire gear. But the problem has been the inability to acquire gear, which has been leading to a lot of the difficulty early on. And I feel like that accessibility will create a better experience for players overall. Anyway, those are my comments. They're probably very neutrally positioned. Currently, there is a bit of a divide between different player bases in the game, and we need to cut that shit out and just focus on how do we provide good feedback to make this the best possible game possible. Anyway, if you like this video, don't forget to like and sub, and also follow the Twitch and all the other stuff that's down below in the description. And I will see you guys later on.